And within 8 weeks, we had gone from just us using the site to being the #1 bedtime story website.
Hello and welcome to the Founded and Grounded podcast. I'm Dr. Becky Sage and I'm here today with Ollie, as always. Hi, Ollie.
How you doing? You all right?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. We're flying through this season. Yeah, really excited for today's guests. They bring so much energy and passion into what they're doing.
And you didn't announce to us who they were last week, so you gave us a clue that they had a first on Dragon's Den, but didn't tell us who they were. So is it time to reveal it?
I think it is, yeah. So I caught up with the lovely married couple that is Charlene and Simon. They are founders of a business called Sooper Books. So if you have watched Dragon's Den, they actually made Den history, giving away 5% of their company for only £5 British. And their startup is basically offering a book streaming service for children.
Now, I don't watch Dragon's Den, and I don't know if this is the right place to admit that, surrounded by so many entrepreneurs, but I don't watch it because it's both too close to the bone and also not close to the bone at all because it's really dramatized. So I never used to watch it because I would just get too stressed, because if I wasn't doing business, I wanted to be switching off from business. But Dragon's Den history, I'm very excited to hear more about this. Let's have a listen to how and why Simon and Charlene decided to give away 5% of their company for just £5.
Good morning, Charlene and Simon. How are you both doing?
Yeah, we're well,
Yeah,
thank
good,
you.
thank you.
Thank you for having us, Ollie.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I know there was a bit of an issue this morning with your car, so you quickly managed to go down to the rental store and actually rent a car to get here. So I appreciate your dedication to the cause.
That's all right.
No problem.
We hired an MG, so it was all lovely.
Excellent. So can you guys take me back to when Sooper Books was a seed of an idea in your heads, and tell me about how your daughter was the inspiration behind the business?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was expecting Goldie at the time, and so I come from a background in illustration, and Sai's actually in the banking world, but has always had a passion for writing. And I think we knew somewhere along the lines, we knew we'd end up working together, but we didn't realise it was going to become our business. And Sai started writing some little rhymes, retellings of stories, and I'd illustrate them in the background. And we thought, do you know what, maybe we've got something here for Goldie, our daughter. And so we put them online as superbooks.com. And that's when lockdown actually hit, and we thought, okay, maybe we should start sharing them with family, friends, schools. So literally, I think Sai must have, how many schools did you get? You must have got...
Yeah, it was, really organic. I mean, it started with Charlene's sister, didn't it? She wanted, because the homeschooling, the schools were all locked down and parents were doing homeschooling. So Charlene's sister's got 5 kids.
Wow.
And they started using it. And I think then some of her friends started using it as well. And then it sort of went to other schools, and then those schools told other schools. And then we thought, oh, well, actually, we may as well just contact the schools. So we got a list of head teachers, and we just said,
did a blast out, a massive blast out.
Here's Sooper Books if you want it. And I mean, it was literally hundreds and hundreds of schools within weeks were using it. And then what happened was Google then was like, well, hang on a minute, what's this website that all these schools are linking to? And within probably 8 weeks, we had gone from just us using the site to being the #1 bedtime story website in the world, in 50 countries in the world. It was just absolutely crazy. We just looked, if you look at our analytics, it literally is flat line along the bottom, and then it just goes straight up. It's just crazy.
And that's when we thought maybe it's not just Goldie that we'll
Yeah,
be sharing this with.
And we're kind of like logging on each day, kind of going, hang on a minute, it's going up and up and up and up. And it was, and we pushed sites off the top that had been there for 15 years. You know, it was just crazy. Yeah, we didn't expect anything close to that. Well, we didn't expect anything, never mind anything close to that. So, yeah.
Well, that's crazy. And I'm going to ask you a bit later on about the strategies behind that of getting onto Google's number one page. But before we do that, I'm interested in both of you personally. And I know, as you said before, you came from the world of illustration. Charlene and Si came from investment banking, which are quite two kind of different worlds. So how did you guys meet?
Good old internet.
I love it.
Yeah. Good old internet.
It's a funny story, actually. I don't know if you want me to go into the so it was eHarmony, and I just moved to London, and I was like raring to go, meet people, everything else. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to try this internet dating. You know, it was still a bit dodgy at that time, I guess, and people are a bit like, oh, you trying that, whereas now it's
commonplace,
the norm, isn't it? So I signed up, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to go for a paying one, because, you know, I might meet, you know, not saying anything about the non-paying ones, but let's see where we go. And so I signed up, and I think you were my second date, so very early on. And
I was coming to the end of my subscription.
I was coming to the end of his subscription.
I need to get my value.
Last month.
This one doesn't work.
You were at the start.
I was at the start, so I was like, I can't put everything.
I go for the second one.
I can't go for everything, you know. I've got to lay my options open. So we had a great date though. We just kind of clicked, and I think we arranged to meet for a coffee, and it ended up being a coffee, a walk, and then we even went out for dinner. I think. And but then we never saw each other again for a year.
Oh wow!
I went back to Edinburgh.
I was at the start of my subscription, so I needed to see more people. So I was very much like, so I was like, no, I want to start seeing you, and I was just like, you know, no, I need to play the field a bit and see what else is out there. So yeah, we just kind of drifted apart, didn't we? And then
what brought you back together then?
So
you messaged, didn't you?
I messaged you just out of the blue. Something reminded me about you. I was freelancing at the time, and you'd seen, the weird thing was, I messaged you and I got this reply back. I thought, oh, he's probably with someone else by now. But I thought, you know what, I'll just message. So I messaged, and within seconds I had this reply, and I was like, obviously he's not with anyone else.
It was so weird. It was so weird.
I had
playing it cool there, so.
I just had a new range of greeting cards that had just gone out into retail, and you messaged me back saying, I've seen some of your work out in the...
I think when you messaged me, it was either that day or I was even in the shop. It was bizarre. Yeah, it was like I was in a bookshop and I was looking at something or cards or something.
Yeah. And then
I'm sure the message came through.
And you said something like, I'm with your work or something. And I was like, well, that's not freaky or anything. And then you were back to London. I think you were thinking about moving back to London, and then, the rest is history. You moved back to London. I was already in London, and then...
But there's a really strange family connection as well. The first time I went round to Charlene's house and met her mum and dad, her dad's a golfer and I play golf. And it turned out that Charlene's great-grandfather founded the golf club that my family were all members of.
Wow.
And our grandfathers ended up being in the same school in the same year for a short period before Charlene's side of the family then obviously moved down to kind of Birmingham way, and
it was meant to be then.
Up in Edinburgh, so
we like to think that, you know.
Good stuff. So fast forwarding back to the time when, you know, you were getting a bit of traction, schools were taking on Sooper Books, word of mouth was going crazy. Take me back to the exact moment when you both decided we're going to quit our jobs and take this leap of faith and go into the business full time.
I think that's when we realised people wanted to invest in us and our business.
I think it's when we hit the top of Google, we thought, this isn't a hobby.
Yeah, that's when we thought, okay, maybe we've got something here, but we weren't necessarily ready to just hand everything in of what we were doing. And we put
because we were both freelancing.
Yeah.
So I was doing, some business consulting. Charlene was still doing her illustration at the time, but it had been lockdown. Our kind of clients had pretty much dried up. It was quite a difficult time for us.
Plus
So it wasn't like we were going from earning loads of money to, let's quit all that and do this. Like, we'd been through a kind of stage of, not earning that much, not really knowing what we wanted to do next. And we had this thing, and we were like, well, we got this thing, but we also don't have enough money to fund it. So the next stage of that was, we need to find an investor. And I worked in banking, so you would think, oh, maybe he's got connections and stuff. It wasn't really like that. I didn't have any sort of angel kind of connections or anything. We literally went onto LinkedIn and saw a post from Henry Dezote, who was on Dragon's Den, and I remember seeing him on Dragon's Den to just look after my bills, and he had just exited that and had posted saying, anyone that wants to meet for a coffee, doing a startup, just let me know. And I thought, well, why don't we just send? So he's told him the story about the the hits and all this, and I wasn't expecting anything at all. Like within 15 minutes, he'd send a message saying, yeah, great, let's meet up. So he came to.
So we were still in lockdown at this point. So we
had it was towards the end of lockdown, wasn't it? So you were allowed to come out and meet, but you had to meet in an open space. So he came to meet us in the park.
Yeah,
and we had Goldie.
Park. We still had Goldie. We had no one to look after Goldie, obviously, because childcare then couldn't have it. And so we all three of us went for the meeting. And we must have looped around.
Managed to get Goldie to sleep before the meeting.
Must have looped around Putney Gardens about 20 times having our meeting, and it was just great. He just got what we want, got our business model, what we wanted to achieve, and could see, I guess, a future for Sooper Books. And he kind of said there and then, like, leave it with me, but yeah, I'm definitely interested. And he even mentioned then about going on. He was like, you need to take this on Dragon's Den. Yeah. And we kind of scoffed at it. And we were like, we'll leave that, And we had a call back from him, and he was like, yeah, I want to invest in you guys, want to help you, be your advisor. And then he just literally plugged us into the world of investment.
Because this was the point where we realized how powerful a network can be, because what we didn't realize at the time, obviously he very successful founder, he sold his business to Go Compare, but he was part of Y Combinator, and that is a very, very powerful network. So the angels and kind of VC network that he was in London is the kind of what we found out was it's the best you can get. So he kind of made a few introductions to a few people, and before we knew it, we were thinking. So we went in, we thought, we'll raise a few $100,000 to kind of to get this thing going, and then just more and more people were saying, yeah, we'll invest, and we ended up having to basically cut the allocation in half and take 800,000. Like it was ridiculous. It was oversubscribed from all these amazing people, and I remember doing it. Remember the calls that we were doing. We were doing all these investor calls. Again, I think the experience of banking helped because a lot of my job there was pitching. So kind of positioning the vision and making sure that all the numbers were right and things like that. But it just kept on. It was just crazy. We kept on kind of coming out of these meetings going, hang on a minute. So you mean that like this lord has now invested? Oh, well, now Princess Beatrice has invested. Now, we've got VCs. I'm just like, this is bananas. Because a few months ago, we didn't have any, it was just us
Wow.
writing stories. It was just
It's incredible.
crazy.
I mean, so you actually got, as you said, 800k there from 29 angels in total, 2 VC funds. What advice would you give to any founders listening right now who are potentially embarking on their fundraising journey?
I would. Do you want to say? Yeah. Well, I would say just be very clear with what the vision for the business is, and just get people excited about it. So it's the clarity. I would say it's the clarity of the vision, and then how you build the pathway to that. What's the plan to get there?
And I think also it's connections as well. I think that was the key for us. And it's talking to anyone and everyone you can, because you don't know what's around the corner and you don't know who they're connected to either. And I think that's what we found. Anything that comes through to us now, we're like, or if someone sends us an email saying, do you want to speak to this person? We're like, yes, just take the meeting, because you just don't know who they're connected to, what they might know. So yeah, I think very much go in wide eyes and willing to speak to anyone and everyone.
Yeah, and the lesson for me here is that momentum, isn't it? So you had that first meeting.
Yeah.
He started plugging you into networks, and then you're like kind of navigating your way through all of this world of fundraising and building lots more connections, and obviously ended up being oversubscribed. So what a fantastic story.
Yeah. And I think that was the platform for us, where we were like, okay, we need to show these people what we can do now. They've believed in us, so we've got to believe in our business. And that's when we stopped everything else and put everything into Sooper Books. Yeah.
Also try and be memorable in some way. You obviously saw the kind of Dragon's Den stuff that we did when we went in there, but the same thing applies when you're doing, a meeting on Zoom. It's try and find some ways to be memorable, different,
Simon's
fun,
renowned for his meetings in his out there shirts that he wears.
Crazy
let's just
Hawaiian
say.
shirts. And I got comments, did you get dressed in the dark this morning and all this sort of stuff? But it just lightens the spirit.
It does.
And I mean, it works for us because obviously we're a children's brand, and that's so
it's in that.
Consider your environment and how that works, but kind of think of it as a whole brand piece together. And then just try and do something that's a little bit different, and that they would go, oh, hang on a minute, because I think that sets the scene for that person is putting their trust in you. It's actually in you. It's not really. It's the idea, that's great, but it's the execution that they're really investing into. So yeah, try and be memorable.
Some great advice there. And going back to when you achieved over 1 million monthly users in just 6 weeks, talk to me a bit about the strategy behind that and ranking on Google.
I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but not a huge amount. I mean, it was literally, at the time we had a WordPress website. We were just doing everything ourselves. So it was a case of going on YouTube, doing the tutorials, taking the advice, making all the changes, and then just, being quite analytical as well. So we positioned our whole website around bedtime stories, and you get very, very mixed advice on Google about different things, and what worked for us, and I'm not sure if this would work for everybody, but what we noticed was that there was a lot of volume for the keyword term bedtime stories, and it was a very difficult keyword to rank for, but it didn't seem impossible. And when we looked at it, we thought the number one, the first page basically, this content isn't great. There's a lot of it, but it's not brilliant. So I think fundamentally we felt like the quality of our content could win. Over time, we were thinking, it might take 10 years to get there, but but we thought that's fundamental. Like, can you beat the quality that already exists there? I mean, in some industries, you just can't win because it might just be loaded with massive brands putting huge budgets into this. But in our case, it wasn't. So we built the site around that one keyword, not more than one, just one. And every single time we got a link, we sent it to that one page. And it's as simple as that.
Incredible. Incredible. We've got to talk about Dragon's Den now. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
And second, I have to say your presentation was pitch perfect. It was memorable. It was engaging. It was all of those things that you've been talking about. You obviously managed to get all 5 dragons on board as well. And you gave away 5% of the company for a Den first £5.
Yes.
You also another first in the Den where you actually made the dragons, or they decided themselves to go over the wall to themselves and have a conversation about how they were going to take this forward.
Yeah.
So can you just tell?
Firsts.
Yeah, a lot of firsts. So I just want to know a bit about the entire experience, what happens after the camera stops rolling, and why are relationships worth so much more than money?
Okay, good questions. Okay, well, it all started, it's been quite a long process. So from the moment we found out we'd...
Do you want to start before?
Well,
I didn't actually tell Charlene
I applied.
Okay.
So I filled out the application form without me knowing, and then didn't say anything until you had the call back from the BBC. And I walked into the office that morning, and Simon swiveled around in his chair, and he went, "I've got something." I've got something to tell you. And usually I can just guess already, and you're not very good at keeping secrets. You think you are, but you're not. You can tell everything on your face. But he just got me on that day, and I was like, "What?" I've just had a call back from the BBC, and as soon as he said the BBC, I was like, I know exactly what you're going to say, because it'd been spoken about, but I thought...
Didn't take action.
I think we were just putting off.
I was making every excuse under the sun, but I was very, justified in my excuses. Like, well, it's the time for business.
I'm not sure we'd get the call back. But I think deep down, we're both fans. Simon's a massive fan. I think deep down we always wanted to see ourselves on there, but I just think the nerves just took over. Anyway, we got the call back, and from then, I think we had to go through various stages of interviews. But we got through them all. And then when we got that final call back that said, yep, you're going to be come and film with us, we're a bit like, oh my God, this is real now. And that's when we literally, we spoke to our team, and we were like, you've just got to take control for the next 2 weeks, because we need to literally go into revision mode now. And we did. We literally, we combined a folder together. This is like organisational skills now. We combined a folder together. We had notelets everywhere. And we just went hell for leather for 2 weeks and didn't do anything else other than just get our gear into control for going in
watching the pictures as well, reruns of things and YouTube clips. And I was looking at patterns of... how much people were asking for, the types of equity, what happens when companies, that are backed go in there, and typically they just get ripped apart because they go in and they offer, they ask for some it's not a thing. That's the thing in this. The VC and angel world is just so different to what they portray, and it is actually really normal to go in, to have a business that's not actually generating revenue, that has a valuation of £1.5-2 million, because that's just how the maths works to get the investment. But they just really don't like it. There was a lot of kind of research on how can we do this a bit differently.
Yeah, and that's when we decided we thought, okay, we're a creative company, how can we make ourselves look creative in front of the dragons? And we thought, okay, well, we've got to bring what our product is. So that's when we decided to think of almost like a little teaser story, so that, because we were like, how can we can show them pictures and put a digital screen up and show them all our other stories, but we need them to actually be immersed in what it is. So that's when we came up with the dragon story idea. That was the take on Weird Life, which is one of our series. It's like a David Attenborough mockumentary. And we thought, yeah, let's go for that. And then we were like, okay, let's do the pitch in rhyme. Like, that's Simon's forte. I was like, yeah, that's your forte. We've got our pitch together. Come on, you can just turn it like that into a rhyme. And so you worked on that, and then we were just like, yeah, this is the way forward. But then I think it added a lot of pressure onto us, because we were like, well, we can't go wrong. Like, any line we go wrong, it's just going to muck up the whole poem.
And the way that the rhymes are done is that they're 8-syllable rhyming couplet, right? So it's like literally down to the syllable, and even sometimes down to like the way that the meter happens within the syllables. And if you miss one beat, it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't work. And you the whole thing kind of unravels. So that's like,
how many times did you practice it?
Oh my gosh,
Hundreds.
Well, let's just put it this way. Goldie knew it word for word, and we used to be taking her for walks sometimes, and we'd just stop and she'd carry on for us without, and we were like, oh my gosh, Goldie. But by the end of it, she was sick of it.
She was so sick of it. Like,
oh,
don't do the dragons. No, not the dragons rhyme again.
But yeah, it was really fun. I mean, she didn't have a clue what was going on, but she knew we were practicing for something. She knew we were going to see some dragons. She actually thought we were going to see real dragons. She couldn't quite understand, but I think she knew something was going on. Yeah. But yeah, we practice in front of family as well, just anyone. I mean, obviously we had to keep it under kind of, low key, but anyone that literally walked into our house, anyone that we went to see, we were like, can we just do this once round on you? But yeah, it was when we had to travel the night before to Manchester, but it was actually only 48 hours before that we decided to change. So we were going in there to ask for money. And it was 48 hours before that we practiced again, and we felt there's something not quite right here. And that's when we thought about, okay, let's go in and ask for no money at all. We just thought, I mean, we had investment, we have a team. We were like, basically, the money we are asking for would last us from the dragons, wouldn't really take us that further in the business. Or really, what we're going in there for is the connections. So we were like, so why are we asking for money at all? And that's when you rang the BBC and you were like, we've got this idea. What do you think about us coming in and asking for no money at all? And they were like, well, we're a money program. You have to ask for something, but there's nothing stopping you from asking for £1.
Well, the lady that we were dealing with did say, straight away said, they'll never let you do that. And then...
But she took it.
But I said, please, just like take it.
It's our lives on the line. Come on.
Can you take it to the producers? So she took it to the producers, and then it came back. So we had this 24-hour... So it was 40 hours before we made that call. Then 24 hours we had to wait for the reply.
And we were even in them, we were like, should we, shan't we? I mean, this is a massive risk. If they come back and say yes, are we still doing the right thing? Yeah, are we actually going to do it? Anyway, they came back and they said, you can't ask for no money, but there's nothing stopping you asking for £1. But they very much specified it's at your own risk. We don't know how this could go, but it's up to you. So we thought about it and we were like, do you know what? When have we ever taken an easy option in our life? We love a challenge. We were like, it's something different as well. Even if they laugh at us, it will make television somehow. I don't know if it's in the good ways or the bad ways. We were like, let's just go for it. And I think it made it a bit more exciting for us as well. We did have to change part of the rhymes. That was your bit, thank God. You were like, I've got to remember this line.
And it's the bit where you asked for the offer. Can you imagine you had said the wrong thing? Changed the whole pitch.
But yeah, we went off and we went to Manchester the night before, woke up in the morning, got told, you're only told as well, I think it's a day or so before, whether you're on in the morning or the afternoon slot. Okay. So we were told we were the afternoon slot. I'm not sure if that's just to add more anticipation or what.
Yeah, want to get it over and done with, right?
Absolutely.
We wanted to get it over and done with. So when we were told afternoon, we were like, oh no. So we woke up and we got told to go probably at 11 to arrive at the studio, but we just couldn't pace around anymore. So we were like, let's just get there for 10. We got there and we were told good news and bad news. Good news, you're the only one this afternoon. You're the only pitch in the afternoon. Bad news, the first pitch has only just come out. So you're going to be waiting. I think there was 3 other pitches in front of us. So we were like, great. We're here for like the long haul. So we had a 5-hour wait when we actually arrived at the studio until we actually went in. But you know what? It actually was pleasantly relaxing being there. And I think because you were in that environment, we had amazing people looking afterwards. We had an amazing runner. And that poor runner, though, Michael, his name was, but he must have known our pitch as well by the time we went in. But yeah, we could meet the other pitchers beforehand, but you didn't see them when they came out of the den, so you were never sure of the outcome for them. But I think everyone had the same nerves, so they very much kept themselves to themselves.
Yeah,
and
just people you could see them just wandering around, kind of.
But no, it was much better going in early, and I'm pleased we did. By the time we went in, we were all guns blazing. I mean, there was not a lot more we could do really, and we decided that the day before. We kind of said, let's just stop now because there's a limit,
Yeah.
And yeah, we just went for it, and luckily our pitch was okay.
It was brilliant.
We got through it, and from then on, I think. This is the other thing, it's so heavily edited. Like, it was edited to 10 minutes. We were in there for just over an hour. Yeah. So, we were worried we were going to be absolutely grilled, but actually
there's so much more you talk about.
It was just a conversation with them all, and they all got our model. And again, what you didn't see on the television is they all had their own ideas about where it could go. And I think, especially for me, that was when it was having that validation from amazing people sitting in front of you, and you think, wow, okay, maybe we do really have, it was that validation, I think, that brought the emotion as well, that started the emotion off. Yeah. But yeah, it was.
And the funny thing about that was when we were in the park the day before, I hadn't even considered getting like that emotional about it.
Yeah, because I said to you,
I
don't want to cry in there. What if I suddenly cry?
You won't cry.
I was like, why would you
cry? I was like, I definitely won't cry.
But the thing is, I thought I'd get emotional maybe because we were getting grilled. I didn't think it would be the complete polar opposite. I thought maybe I'd suddenly get like, you rabbit in headlights and think, oh my gosh, you see these people on television, and I've got so much admiration now for anyone that goes on that programme. But you see people really, again, it's edited, but really getting grilled, and I wasn't sure how I'd handle that. And I didn't realise the emotion would come from exact opposite end of kind of where I thought.
But they said just amazing stuff that was cut out, just it was, yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. And there's a bit, actually, if you watch it closely, you'll see there's a bit where Sarah comes in and she says, finally I've had a chance to speak. That's because for about probably 20-25 minutes before that, they were just, the dragons were pinging stuff over each other. No, you don't do it like that, you do it like this, and you do it like that. And she was trying to get a word in like that. And yeah, so it was, there was loads of stuff. And there was so much stuff we prepared that they didn't ask as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I prepared the numbers down to every single line on, the P&L.
But we needed to do that. Like, you need to be over-prepared for something like that. I'd much prefer to come out of a situation like that and think, okay, we didn't speak about half of what we prepared, but at least we had it prepared in case.
But the other thing about doing that, the offer that we gave was that we didn't want, and this was to do with the research that we did beforehand, what happens with these funded startups. And this is this is a pattern that's happened over the last couple of seasons, where it's gone it's not, some person that's coming in with an invention now. It's people that are coming in with properly funded businesses saying, and it's jarring because they just get stuck at the valuation, and they just the whole thing gets focused on the valuation, and they've got nowhere to go. And we thought, we just need the conversation to be about the mission and what we're trying to achieve, and try and take that off the table to make it, just to take the conversation in a different place, really. And I think that took the heat off the numbers a little bit as well.
And did you communicate with your prior investors going on to the den and talking about that valuation?
Yeah. So we did. But the other thing that we did was for us, this is our decision, and we felt it wasn't fair on the other investors to dilute them because of a decision that we'd made. So the equities come from our side.
Okay, yeah.
And then it's kind of fine. It's just a straight share transfer, and everyone's a winner. So
Excellent. And tell me then about the relationships being more important than money. Then what's the thinking behind that?
Wow, I mean, I think the thing when you start to communicate with them. So we had this whole period of legal stuff, and that lasted 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 5 months of due diligence, backwards and forwards, legal bits and pieces, and probably extended a little bit by the fact that we're dealing with 5 instead of 1, and then after that you get plugged into their teams. So then you start to realise straight away you're going, you go and meet them. So, for example, we met Stephen, and he's talking to us about all different kinds of things that we can sort with the social side of things, but also like conversion and all the types of things that he's really, really good at. And then Tucker, he's just been absolutely brilliant, isn't he? Really, it's so we've got some things that we can't really talk about, but that are in motion in the background, and they're hugely exciting for us. But to try and answer the question, which I've gone round the house on, he's able to plug us in to his team, right? And so the products that we will be bringing out, there is just no way we would have been able to do that without him. We would have literally had to fly to China, create the relationships, try to get them to somehow trust us, whereas he makes one phone call to a guy that he's literally put tens of millions of pounds worth of orders through, who's completely connected to anything that you could want to manufacture, and within moments you've got stuff coming back at you, and that's the kind of difference.
And I think as well it's trust. I think we found this from go. We've been very lucky to build our team through recommendations of people. And I think when that happens, you already know the trust is there with that person because they know that person that you're very trusted to. Whereas money can't do that somehow. You could have all the money in the world and hire someone amazing that looks on paper, but you don't know really how they are. Whereas a connection, a recommendation, it makes it so much more just safe for you to feel like. And we're a small team, we're a very small team, and I think we're quite close as well. And I think it's when it is your baby like that, you want to be a little bit more safe in that respect. And I think connections have been fantastic, like you said, and it's all about that trust in there as well.
I think having 5 dragons as well, they'll each bring something at a different stage of the business as well. Yeah. So that's what we're really excited about in the future. The perfect way to use a dragon is if you want something specific, call them, and they will try and make it happen. The thing which becomes a little bit more tricky when we've got 50 investors now. When you try and get 50 people to agree on a direction, it's not going to happen. No. So we've got to be the ones that create the vision, create the direction. Here's the plan, and
you can ask advice. You can say, what do you think of it? But it's when you go in and ask 50 people, where should we go now?
You're not going to get agreement on anything.
Yeah,
no.
So
that's where having that clearer vision really helps.
That's great. And obviously you were successful in obviously getting all 5 on board, but going into the den, was there a specific dragon that you really wanted to get on board?
We get asked this a lot, Ollie, but actually we never really discussed it between us. And I don't know if that was fate, like we were worried about like what would happen or if it would happen. We didn't want to think that far ahead. But do you know what? We just kind of thought, what will be. If we get one, that will be amazing, whoever it is. There's going to be connections there somewhere. And yeah, the outcome was more than we could have asked for, really.
The other thing is, for us, it's really important how much the person cares about the business. So when we go into these meetings, it's as important to us that the investor really gets it and gets us. Otherwise, it just probably, something won't click in the future, you know? So we kind of left it open to go in and see, you know, what is the response we're going to get back? And if is it going to be someone that responds better than someone else? And
that's the other
we
thing.
do a lot of things on gut, don't we? Like that's the kind of...
We might have gone in and someone might have said, yeah, I'll take, you know, treat it as a bit of a joke. I don't think we probably would have said, okay, then we'll accept your offer. Because I think at the end of the day, we want someone to be passionate about what we're passionate about. Otherwise, there's going to be nothing there for the future to work with that person. So yeah, I think we were very much set, 100% going in. We need to get them excited, basically, and whoever shows their excitement towards us, and that's who we kind of go towards, you know.
The security threat to UK tech startups is growing. Protecting your innovation is crucial to your business success. Secure Innovation is here to help, and it only takes a few simple steps to get started. Don't leave it too late. Visit npsa.gov.uk/innovation to find out more and download the Quick Start Guide for free today. Are you looking to access finance for your business, but unsure where to go and who to trust? Introducing Hexa Finance, providing growth funding to startups and scale-ups throughout the UK. Ben and Stu started Hexa Finance with a clear mission to make finance more accessible to business owners like you. Launched in 2020, they know firsthand the growing pains you're facing. Their fast growth business is the proud winner of the Startup of the Year award and has recently been recognised for its economic contribution. So, if you need funding now, or it's on your horizon, the experienced team at Hexa Finance are here to help. To access your free consultation, simply go to hexafinance.co.uk/contact. Wow, I'm not surprised that the dragons were attracted to the energy of Charlene and Simon. They are so engaging and they sound like really lovely people. They're also clearly storytellers by nature and not just by trade.
Yeah, I mean, they had this pivotal moment where they had to change the ask of what they were going for and actually seek the permission of the producers for obviously their £5 ask. And this was done sort of late on in the day, and they had to reposition their pitch, as we heard. And I think they were just looking for something different. They wanted to go against the grain. We talked about this in the last episode about zigging versus zagging and doing something different. And it was very bold in terms of what they asked for, but ultimately they got what they wanted, which was the dragons on board and partners to them to help them grow their business. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I just have to say, they are the most genuine, warming, amazing couple that I've met in person. I got so much from them, and it was just such a pleasure to be able to sit down with them.
And I'm so happy you said that, because I feel like that means that this piece they were talking about, which is relationships being worth so much more than money in the context of the dragons, but more widely than that, is something that's clearly very kind of inherent and built into them. It's not just a kind of saying or something that made them make Dragon's Den history. It's very real that like they are people who are warm and kind and want to build relationships.
100%. And people are ultimately investing in you as individuals. And as I said before, like the warmth that was coming out of them both was just contagious. It was radiating. And I feel like I would want to be in business with those guys. Like it's infectious. And I think if you are motivated by the people that you're surrounding yourself by, then ultimately you're going to get to where you want to get to, because you're working with people who are very driven, very creative, and just ultimately nice people.
And we hear it all the time, don't we, that investors want to invest in you. This is what they're looking for at the early stages. So it's not just the traction that they have, because of course they bring other things to the party. They're not only bringing themselves as people, but they show up in a very genuine way. And I think when we talk about they're investing in you, this is a big part of it. They need to know that they can trust you. They need to know that this energy you're bringing right now is a genuine energy, and they need to know that they want to work with you. It's like you said, if you were an investor, then you would want to invest in them right now because you would trust them, but you'd also enjoy working alongside them.
And I think enjoyment is probably an underrated factor. Like, if you're really getting on with the people that you're working with, ultimately that's going to add something to your life. And, you know, if you're meeting with them regularly, communicating regularly, then it's ultimately going to add to everyone's well-being.
Yeah, I'm doing some work with different investors that's looking at this whole piece of what does it mean to invest in the founding team? What does it mean to invest in the individuals? And so often the decision gets made actually based on that. Would we enjoy working with these people, or does it feel like we're walking through treacle every time we engage with these people? Related to this, I really like the way they chose to do their pitch and give the dragons, the investors, the taste of their experience. And I think this just takes even further this premise of showing who you are. Like, if you can be that bold to be like, this is how we write the stories, so this is how we're going to show up and pitch to you, like, that's going to stand out. It was giving me loads of ideas as to what I should be doing in my pitches with the businesses that I'm working with, because I was like, yeah, isn't that the best way for them to actually see who you are and what your skills are and what sits behind that initial energy and personality? It's like, no, these are the actual talents in the business, and you're showcasing that in your pitch. I think that's very powerful.
It was epic, the pitch. I think it's so clever. It sums them up. It sums the brand up. Another television show that you probably haven't watched, Becky, is The Apprentice, but there was a chat from it in 2015. The pitch just epitomised them and their vision and the way that they do things differently. Talking about another show, BBC production show that you probably haven't watched either, Becky, is The Apprentice. There was a famous chap on it who kind of went viral. Unfortunately, he sadly died in 2015, but he was called Stu Baggs, and he branded himself. He said, "You are the brand, Stuart Baggs the brand." And I think there's something in this concept that the founders are the brand. Everything they do, the way they interact, they talked about wearing colourful clothing, being creative, like everything they do adds up to this picture of how they want to portray themselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's not just about the external perception of yourself as well. I think it really comes from internal, doesn't it? It's like when you're creating that brand that is you. Sure, if it's I think that can feel a little dirty sometimes if all you're doing is kind of putting on a mask or putting on something to please other people. But if actually what you're doing is letting like all of those things that are you bubble up and allowing that to be seen by everybody else, that's actually the goal. Like, that's what we're aiming for. And it not only helps other people to understand who you are, I think it makes you feel better every day. It makes you feel excited and motivated and actually aligned every single day. And so therefore you're going to have more energy in all the work you do and in the relationships.
If you're showing up as your true self every single day, the feeling of that is quite immeasurable. Like, it just means that everything you're doing, you just feel confident, you feel comfortable, you don't feel like you're saying anything stupid, doing anything wrong. Like, actually, the weaknesses that you do have, like, you can be very vocal about those as well. Like, if you're being your true self, then it just opens so many doors.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but you feel it, don't you? When you're in that place, and I call it being in my vortex. And so, but when you get to that place, you know it and you feel it, and you're trying to replicate that. And it's not always easy, and it's not always possible. And I definitely have days or weeks or even months when I feel very just like I'm lethargic, I'm tired, I feel so busy. And actually, sometimes it's as simple as like, are you doing the exercise you need to do? Are you, I don't know, even what clothes you're wearing, and and having some of those moments that allow you to sort of remind yourself who you are, I think can be really helpful. And then that spreads, and that again plays into the authenticity. Not that you need those external things to be your authentic self, but I think sometimes they help you to get there.
And that's why I bloody love entrepreneurship, because it is this vehicle for this self-expression and enabling you to become who you want to become, right? And these two are doing this in abundance.
Look how much they've done it for us even today. I feel like even just having listened, I mean, I didn't even meet them, but that energy has come through. I feel like even the conversation we're having right now, it's like we both feel energized, and so that's kind of rubbed off. And I guess that's the other beauty of showing up, of being yourself, of having that energy, because it really is infectious. One of the other important things when it comes to relationships being more important than money, and kind of how you build those relationships, is the trust that gets built through trusted connections. And this is something that they really utilize. So they built kind of certain connections, those people trusted them, so they introduced them to the next people. And so by showing up as yourself, you also really build that trust. Now, of course, we see some issues with that as well across the investor ecosystem, which is that sometimes trust means people who look like me, or who have the same background as me, or who know the same people that I know, which is also why some of this ecosystem can be a bit cliquey. But then I think that's why it's even more important for you, if you're not in those circles and you don't have that access, to continue to really show up as yourself, to have that energy to work on building those trusted connections, because we need more people to build those connections and build their businesses from it.
We need brave founders to really penetrate these existing networks, because innovation really isn't going to happen if people aren't bringing their ideas to life. And it requires courage. It requires really going outside of your comfort zone, putting yourself on the line. And it's not easy, and you can get so many rejections along that way, but it will come. If you keep persisting at it, people are going to believe in you. If you keep showing up every day, then it is going to happen. I love this notion of only being 6 degrees of separation from anyone that you want to know. I think this is incredibly powerful. I remember back in the day, LinkedIn used to have this visual tool where you could look at all of your connections. It would draw this kind of like mind map of all of your network. And I just love that image has just stuck with me about this network effect and how you can get into networks and connect with the right people. And ultimately, like, the sky's the limit. Like, ultimately, if you want to meet the right person, you can do it.
LinkedIn is actually an amazing tool for this as well, isn't it? I sometimes have a bit of fun if I'm like, I see, I don't know, somebody who I might want to meet, and I'm like, I wonder how many connections I am away from this person. And you go in and you're like, oh, I'm literally a second connection. Like, quite often, the people who are interested in similar things to us are not that far away at all, especially if you've spent time already building your networks.
And a good reminder, it's not about what you know, it's who you know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But perhaps what you know helps to build that trust when you do meet those people. I want to change course now to something else that came up in this part of the episode, which is viral growth. Now, I've worked a lot with edtech startups, and I would say Sooper Books kind of is similar to some of the businesses that we've worked with, certainly businesses who are looking at things like literacy. And I know that probably if they heard this story, they would feel somewhat jealous right now as to the growth. Now, I'm interested in understanding how much we can actually engineer viral growth, and how much this story kind of illustrates perhaps certain good practice that others can put into practice. Not necessarily to reach viral growth, but perhaps to at least have growth in the business.
We see a lot of virality these days on social media, and I think often people think that, oh, they got really bloody lucky, or they've, just it was the right time, or whatever happened, they were picking up on a trend. But you do have to be quite strategic about these campaigns if you do want to go viral on the internet. You have to be doing something different and not thinking like the masses. Just to lower the tone slightly, just to share an example of a business that went viral, a business called Dude Wipes. They basically went viral after sponsoring the back of a UFC fighter's shorts. Their previous fight, they actually managed to soil themselves in a fight, and then they went on to sponsor them in the next fight with their product. So sometimes it's about, just thinking a bit creatively, not being afraid to sort of go with a decision that probably didn't really make sense, but actually that virality of being able to become an internet sensation is something that you can engineer.
Yeah, I love that. Like seeing an opportunity and going for it, and hats off to both of them, the fighter and the brand, for leaning into that situation, which of course so many of us would probably not be able to lean into in quite the same way. This is one of the reasons I love talking about entrepreneurship. We go like so highbrow to lowbrow very, very quickly sometimes.
I did say it was me lowering the tone there, Becky, and hashtag shit happens.
It's one of your skill sets, Ollie, for sure. It's why you're so likable and you can build so many good relationships too. Founded and grounded, right?
There we go.
So I think that there's, like you said, you certainly being in the right place at the right time, seeing opportunities and going for them. I guess there's so many brands, so many people who would never have dreamt of reaching out to that fighter to be like, hey, we want to sponsor you because this just happened. So certainly I think that that's important. And what happened in this particular situation with Sooper Books is, of course, they were responding to a need that they had. And with lockdown happening, of course, schools and parents were looking for this. And again, the way they describe it is not heavily strategic in the beginning, but they did respond to a need of their small community, of themselves, first of all, their small community. And they did put this online so other people could find it as well. So like you said, it's kind of, it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't have taken those steps to then get picked up, and of course they were then in the right place at the right time. One thing that I think is incredibly important when you are looking for viral growth is to be focused. So it has to be very, very clear what you're delivering and to whom. And I think, again, in this particular case, because they were responding to a very clear need for themselves, they were able to create something. They also created something of quality. And quality doesn't have to mean, for example, like every social media post is super, super shiny and etc. But it does have to be delivering the kind of quality that the people who are looking for it want and need. And they can get something that they kind of weren't even expecting. And I think with Sooper Books, that's part of it, isn't it? That both the illustration and the way the writing is done, like there's a quality there that people really want, and they're not going to question that quality. So I think that again, there's all these things that need to be in the right place if you want things to go viral, or at least, like I said, to grow. And then the other thing that they said was about not competing with the massive brands. So I thought that that's interesting as well. It's like, where's your niche? Where are you going to fit in? And you've talked about this a lot, like thinking differently. What's the uniqueness, and how are you positioning yourself in a way that is unique? Because then when people are looking, and in their case, initially, they had this one keyword that people were looking for. And so they were the people who were found when they were looking for that one keyword. So I think there's kind of several factors at play there, which we can all learn from. And like you said, perhaps we're not going to go, not suddenly going to have millions of downloads of whatever it is we're creating or millions of customers. But at least these things put you in the right place at hopefully the right time.
Yeah, I love what they've done, because they're obviously, first and foremost, solving a problem they face themselves. And lots of great entrepreneurs build businesses like this. They also then understood the market. So where it was going, how they were different, and what they were really, really going to focus in on, obviously their niche and that one key word that they really drove that user growth in the early stages, and just being a great product. Like the illustrations are fabulous, the audio side's great, like just building a really good experience at a very low cost for thousands of people and parents around the world.
Amazing. Now, we know that co-founder relationships can be challenging, but what happens when your co-founder is your spouse? Which actually is much more common than I realised. Shall we find out?
So, co-founding a business is often compared to marriage. What pressure does being already married to each other place on the relationship?
Well, it just amplifies it, doesn't it?
I think it's when to turn off as well from your business, because we're together in the day, we go home together, we then have a child together, and it's
if you're not careful, it all blurs together into just one.
And it can become very work orientated, everything about your life. So we have tried to lay rules down where it comes to kind of supper time and we're like, we shouldn't be talking about work.
Yeah.
But it's really hard. We find that sometimes we're half an hour through eating and we're like, we're still talking about it.
But the thing that becomes really difficult is that sometimes you need to talk about something to get it out, to kind of then move on. And if you think there might be a couple of things that have happened and you just need to get them done and sorted, and otherwise you'll be thinking about those and you can't really move on to the next bit of the conversation. And that's where this happens, where you kind of, it just maybe goes on maybe a bit too much. But
we
it
have
must be the same for
we have got
every
so
business.
much better, much better, haven't we, over the years? And especially with Goldie, we have to remember her, because at the end of the day, she knows what we do. She's very much aware of it, and she can pick up on it when our time is meant to be with her and we're still like in the background. And
what about this idea? What have you told you about this?
And sometimes she actually says to us, "Can you stop talking?" And that's
Love it.
And when she says that to us, that's when we've said in the background, we've got to be more like, her time is our time, like our time with her. And we've massively made that a conscious effort to, because otherwise it becomes too much for us. We need to zone out as well. We need to have that break. Yeah.
So how do you put those boundaries in place?
Well, we had a rule, didn't we? I'm not sure if we stick to it. It was the 9 o'clock rule, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
Sometimes you have to physically let your brain refresh, and Goldie's great for me. That's my way out, because as soon as I'm with her, there's so much that she wants from me and us that you have to get in that headspace. And I think she really helps us.
Yeah.
Because our full attention's on her, and that's what it should be. And then when she goes to bed, we have to just remember to stay in then our time as opposed to work time.
Yeah. So we have a Friday night date night, don't we?
Yeah.
Every Friday night we have. I look forward to
We have
our date night.
Yeah.
Which is just us. It's
still
watching a
us.
film
It's
at
still us
home.
in the house.
It's
We
not
don't leave the
an
house.
actual date.
But it is. It's special because it's like,
you call it something different.
we call it something different. We have different food. Well, I have different food. You have pizza every Friday night. But and I really look forward to that Friday night, because I feel like it's a little bit of what it used to be like as well. And I do feel like we can completely turn off. And then I think we're pretty good at the weekend as well. Again, for Goldie's sake.
Oh well, we're much better than weekend.
It's just.
But I don't think we can sit here and say, "Oh, we've cracked it." We 100% have not cracked it. It's just. It's maybe it's harder for us, because of the actual product as well. We're actually using the product every single day as part of our life. So it's it's so mixed together. You can't be like, oh, today we're not going to use Sooper Books, because Goldie will be like, what?
Yeah, so it's part of our routine using Sooper Books at home. It's part of her bedtime routine. So that becomes very aware, and it's always
Yeah.
quite laughable as well when you take it to bed and something's down on. You can experience it as another
like real
user,
time. Yeah.
because
So you'll be
I
texting
remember
me saying,
I'll-
why isn't this thing
I'm like,
working?
why isn't this working? Goldie's asking for this the posh rat, and I can't load the posh rat. It's not just me, it's going to be millions of other people as well. Like, sort it out, Si. You're downstairs. Go and sort it out. So you're like on the phone to the developer or whatever. But yeah, it's good in that respect, because you understand what other parents or carers are going through. But yeah, it's we haven't cracked it, but we're getting much better at it.
Good answer. And I think if you had cracked it, that would be another $1 million business as well, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, being a parent myself as well, I think the thing that I didn't expect when you become a parent, obviously everything changes, but actually when you're with them, how that actually makes you enables you to live in the present.
Yeah,
Oh.
absolutely.
Could not agree more. It's the one thing that makes your brain just quiet, you know, if they're not screaming in your face. And your brain is like scrambled eggs. But yeah, that is. I've never experienced that before, actually, with anything. Yeah, I agree.
And you've embedded Goldie into the business, as you said, with user testing there, but also she's the chief story officer as well, I believe.
She is indeed, yeah.
Excellent. And how do you manage life then in terms of obviously, being founders, but also being a parent to her? Is there anything else in terms of your support network that enable you to actually do what you do?
Yeah, we're very lucky. So we've recently just moved outside London, and that's just changed the game completely, because we didn't have family in London, so it was always a little bit tricky in that respect. But since we've moved closer to family, it's been an absolute game changer for us. Like, our family know our business inside out and what we're trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, we've got this beautiful little girl, and you've got to remember her. So we are so lucky we've got my sister around the corner, and we've got my parents the other side of us as well. So yeah, we have a lot of family support from cousins, granny and grandpas, everything. Yeah, so yeah, we're very lucky in that respect.
And she's also in nursery 3 days now, or 2.5 days.
Yeah.
Which has, it's just made things, just that bit easier for us, just from having a bit more time to do the business.
It's routine for her, routine for us, because that's one thing we wanted from having Goldie. We wanted to be there for her. We didn't want to chuck her into nursery straight away. It works for some people, but I knew it wouldn't work for our vision of what we saw as family life. So we were very lucky that at the start, well, obviously COVID came, so we had no choice. So we were all in a little bubble for quite a while. But very lucky now to have family support. We couldn't ask for any more, really. It's incredible that we've got a family around us, yeah.
What's one of your favourite failures so far with Sooper Books, and what was the lesson that you took from it?
Okay, so we the site was completely free, open. We built it around it essentially just being a free service, because that's what we wanted for us. Then we decided there was a phase. Was it before investment? I can't remember.
Yes,
just
it might have
before?
been just on the borderline. Yeah.
We tried to monetize.
It was more a test.
It was
wasn't
So we tested this idea, and it was mainly driven by the fact that we just didn't have enough income to keep us to support ourselves. So we were like, well, we'll try this subscription service. But I didn't understand enough about Google at that point, right? So we've gone from like getting these crazy, massive, like loads of hits, and then we put the paywall on the site, and Google, like within weeks, was like, no, we're not having that. And it was a very, very fast learning curve for that, where we were like, right, we just don't understand what's happening here. So we started trying to find out much more about the SEO side of things. but that tanked our traffic. And I think it was a combination of kind of like the COVID bubble bursting a little bit and putting this thing on, where the traffic really kind of like did this burp. And then we realized actually it had to, what we thought was it had to be free in order to monetize, but that's not true. What we realized was that we just didn't know enough about SEO.
Yeah.
So one of the first hires that we made when we got the money was we hired Carl, who is literally one of the best SEO experts in the UK, and he totally transformed
It was a game changer
how
for us,
we
yeah.
how we looked at Google and how we built it out, because, and that actually goes back to that thing I was saying earlier. It was great when we decided to go for that one keyword, which was great to start with, but we had no diversification. So we immediately saw, like, if something happens to that keyword, your traffic's gone.
Yeah.
And he came in and was like, right, we're going to diversify you into a category leader across the whole thing, which is essentially what we've managed to do now. So I think we can say that we're the category leader in children's stories now in Google. And that's, so what that means for us is it's something like we had one keyword that we were ranking number one for, or a couple, and we're now at 19,000 different keywords ranking number one.
That's some good diversification right there.
So he's managed to basically take us into a position where we can now run these tests again properly. But again, you're learning. Just don't have a, yeah, and that's
Well,
another.
I think it leads to the delegation as well. I think
Yeah,
Si and I, we're perfectionists, which can work in our favour at some point, but we do try to dibble dabble in a bit too much and think that we can do everything as well between us. And we've very quickly learned that that's not the case, and that's not the case if you want to grow your business. You have to bring other amazing people in, share the dream with them, hope they're on board, and also people that are better than you as well, and you have to stand back. And I think we both found that pretty hard at the start.
Yeah, it's always an issue for founders, I think, because you start as obviously a generalist wearing lots of different hats, but to enable growth, obviously you've got to let specialists come in to grow the business, but you've got to let go of things.
Yeah.
But also I think the great thing is that you do get a grounding and an understanding of how to do in each and every job, maybe not in the best way, but so when you are delegating that, you know firsthand what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a hard lesson for us because we were a bit like, you think, is this person the right person or can they do it? But actually, when you see the growth and where it can go, you think, yes, okay. And I think that's helped us to ease a bit and also be a bit like, we can't be wearing 10 hats on the same day, every day. It's exhausting and we can't do it as well as
Someone
delegating.
Done it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And he's done,
So we very quickly learned that and we've kept that up, which is good.
But this is where it comes back to the vision again. It's like everything comes back to the vision, because selling the dream to not just investors, it's the team, it's everyone that comes on this journey with you, and that is, it's just so important to get that right.
So building a business can be all-consuming at times. What's a sacrifice that you've made either consciously or subconsciously?
Well, I know what mine is. I mean, it's friends, social time. That's the bit in the pie chart which is lacking. And it, you call friends and things like that, but it's not the same as actually, seeing them real life. And my friends are spread around the world now, So that part of it is, I think it was maybe subconscious to start with, but then it became conscious, and then you're like, well, I'm not actually sure how to solve that, to be honest. And I think it maybe is just one of those things that for now, like every busy family, that side of things just kind of gets kind of paused a little bit, or
And I guess, yeah, just accepting that, and, you know, ultimately good friends will stay friends in the long term, right?
Yeah. But I think trying to find some time for yourself to do something, even if it's just a hobby or, you know, hitting some balls on the range or whatever, just some time away.
I think you need
good.
that
I think
as well.
you do need it. You do need
Like,
the
I know I
balance.
need it. I struggled quite early on with everything, with the business coming about and Goldie coming into the world. It was a lot, and it was a lot for me.
And it was lockdown as well.
Yeah. Three big things right there.
Yeah, and I really did struggle, and I think we struggled a little bit through it. I'm not sure how we got out the other end, but we did. And I think that's through communication. That's one thing we've always been so amazing at in our relationship, is communication. And I think without that, I think we probably wouldn't be here today. Together, business, everything, you know. But yeah, I know I went through it. And I think when I sat back and thought about what is it that is making me feel like this, is not, you know, because I'm quite a positive person, but I went through I dipped quite quickly, and I realised it was because I wasn't getting that little bit of me time that I needed to refresh. And I felt almost guilty feeling like that, because I was like, I've just had a little baby. I've got an amazing family. The three of us are great together. Or we've got a business that we're growing. And I felt really guilty for thinking that. And I put it to the back for a while. And it was only when my mum actually came to me and said, "You look awful."
Love the honesty.
In the nicest possible way. You need to change something. Like, we can tell, like my mum and dad, my family know me inside out. They can tell anything when there's anything wrong. And yeah, it took my mum and dad, obviously we speak about it, it took them, they came to me and they said, you need to sort something out now, whether that's you need to take a step back from, you know, we're here for you, we're here to support Goldie, but you need to take a step back from something, or something needs to change. And that's when I realised, I just need that little bit of time for me. And I've put that into place now. And every morning I get up, whether it's 6 o'clock in the morning, I just get up and I go for that run. And that clears my head. And I've brought that back in now. And yeah, it's amazing.
I do the same, and it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's clear from listening to the Sooper Books story how important evolution is in business. Your business is never going to start the same way that it's going to end up. And you have to really figure out when's the right time to stay the course and when's the right time to pivot. And this is something that we can explore a little bit more, and that Simon and Charlene had to explore in their favourite failure that they described to us. So they wanted it to be completely free, and of course that allowed them to get this very, very fast growth. But then they added the paywall and their traffic completely tanked. So this was the time they then had to learn about SEO. So it wasn't necessarily the pivot that was wrong, but they had to know how to then respond to the pivot that they'd chosen to do and try and catch up actually with that decision that they'd made so that they can get their traffic back. So what do you think is important when you're navigating a pivot?
Firstly, you definitely got to look at the data, like what is the story that's being told and why. So I would be reaching out to customers, understanding why they potentially weren't converting from a freemium model into a paid customer, what their objections were. Obviously, they were ranking on this one keyword originally, so they built the success in the early days on the back of this SEO, but they couldn't obviously rest on their laurels here. They grew, they got bigger, they were ranking this one keyword, and then obviously everything changed. So it's about being open to learning. I think that's the lesson here, is that what got them success in the early days isn't what's going to make them successful in the long run without iteration and growth. So they employed a SEO specialist and now ranking for hundreds of keywords in their sector, and that's enabled them to attract more customers. But ultimately, coming back to your question, it is hard. I think you've got to you've got to test and measure. But coming back to your question, Becky, knowing when to pivot or not, like you've got to look at the data, you've got to make informed decisions, you've got to not go away from your core focus as well. Like your North Star is still going to be there. So it's about maybe making mini experiments to see whether this new course is the right direction to go in or not. Yeah,
it's almost like you're starting up again, actually, and you kind of need to think in that lean way. We talk about Greiner's growth model in some of the training that I do, and in the growth model, it's essentially you have these different crises. Now, the crises don't necessarily have to mean that there's something terrible going on, but you have to be able to recognize as a founder, are you starting to stagnate? Because if you are, then there's a strong chance that you're actually going to start dropping off. You're actually going to, maybe there's other people who are coming into the market that you need to compete with. Maybe your operations could be more efficient and there's something to do with that. But this is the point at which you need to be able to sense that it's time to pivot. We often talk about sort of living on the edge or at the edge when you're an entrepreneur. And you need to keep doing that. You can't just rest on your laurels, because otherwise you potentially will lose the whole business. Businesses don't just keep running if we don't do anything. So I think certainly being able to know when is the right time to make those shifts. So this was also about, for them, recognizing where is the issue here, because perhaps the issue wasn't that customers aren't going to pay. The issue was the whole Google keywords thing. And I think it was more than hundreds. I think they said in the interview it was 19,000 keywords. So they went from 1 to 19,000. Talk about kind of an expansion there. But it would never have been right for them to do 19,000 keywords in the beginning. Like, that one keyword is what allowed them to get to where they'd got to. And of course, once you've got that kind of traction, you only need a certain percentage to convert. You just need to make sure people can still find you at that point in time.
And that's the point, isn't it? At the time, they wouldn't have had the resources to rank on all the know-how to be able to rank on all those 19,000 keywords. So it's about using your resources at the time in the best possible way and allocation to have the biggest impact you can on the business.
And Simon and Charlene have done that as a family unit alongside their daughter, Goldie. I loved the way they talked about how they essentially are all part of this business building together. And actually, it's like, for me, listening in, it felt like this was part of the unique strength that they have as a business, as that they've got this family support. So that when we're talking about kind of all those challenges that you have as a business, the things that you need to sacrifice, they've actually built a really nice unit whereby they don't feel like they are actually sacrificing everything in their life. They've actually got what they need right there, and the business is part of that.
And it's all the same, isn't it? There isn't this distinction between the two. And obviously Goldie being their chief story officer and being able to test the stories and illustrations on her is amazing. Like, that just makes complete sense, right? If you can constantly do that each and every night, then how much growth for potential has your product got? I think it's incredible.
Absolutely. And I loved when they said, like, she demands it every night. Like, they couldn't not use their own product at home. And it sort of sounds obvious, but I think in many cases this doesn't happen in a business. It's sort of like, if you do leave it at the door, then, well, you can't actually integrate it into your life. And then do you really have that energy and love for all of it? Of course, it's different in different situations, but in this particular one, it makes so much sense. And really, this is where the business was born from. And this is where the business is going to continue to grow. So I really loved hearing about that. And it just, again, brought it to life. And the other thing being, Charlene mentioned her wider family kind of stepping in and saying to her, like, you look awful. Thanks,
that
family.
Honesty.
Yeah. And that something needs to change. And she listened to them. And she, I guess, because she knew that it needed to change. And now she goes for her run and she clears her head. And so having those people around you is so vitally important.
Entrepreneurship is ultimately a team sport, I'd say. Even if you're a sole founder in a business, like, it's your support network that is going to pick you up when you're down. They're going to, not let your ego get to your head when things are going really well. They're just going to be honest with you because they know you inside out, and you need this feedback and this support system because you can't do it all on your own. Even if you're a married couple in their case, it's impossible. It's about how can everyone make you be the best version of yourself in order to fulfill your own goals.
And in this case, we've already reflected on it, how important them showing up as themselves, them showing up with a certain energy, with that warmth, that kindness. If they're burnt out, that doesn't happen anymore. And that doesn't come out in the creativity of the product either.
And you're going to notice that very quickly. If something's not right, if somebody's burnt out, it's going to come across in terms of the way that you're thinking, the way that you're communicating, the non-verbal communication. Like, everything is going to be off kilter, and that's going to have bad repercussions on your business, on your customers, on your bottom line, all round really. So if you're close to burnout, it's about acknowledging that, taking that advice on board and doing the things that re-energize you and give you a fresh perspective.
And thankfully, Charlene and the Sooper Books team have got that support system around them, which is why they've been able to create something that is so loved by so many people. Now, they've come a long way already, but there is still further to go. And they've come a long way already, but there is still a long way to go. And they've got some really big goals to improve literacy worldwide. Let's hear about the steps they plan to take next.
We want it to be. We're not sure how much we can tell you
This
at
is
the
a
moment.
this is a really complicated topic, right? There's so many strands at play here, and it's not easy to decipher. There's not one thing that's going to solve literacy problems in the UK. It's happened over a long period of time, and essentially there's a couple of issues. The first is that the children's publishing industry hasn't really changed. They haven't done anything different. They're still printing books. You still buy the books. It's still a sort of retail distribution model. The other thing that's happened in those years is that entertainment has just become, it's exploded. It's instant. You get games, you get TV, you get all the other stuff, which is just easy. It's a touch of a button. So you've got this convenience which is happening through entertainment, and then you couple that with living is more expensive, both parents are working, time is limited, and you get into this situation where reading is just not done. It's just not done as much as it was. It's no longer really seen as an entertainment device. It's more seen as a kind of thing that I have to do because the teachers tell me at school that I've got to read. And we've moved into a position where, there's just not that much time in the day to do it. So our service and the vision that we have is that reading becomes entertainment again. And we can do that using the same model, examples, tricks, things, and that they've put and they used in gaming and entertainment, but we move it back into words, and we say, right, this is how it works. So it's instantly accessible. It's seen by the child as being entertainment, and equivalent to entertainment, and it provides a supportive role to the parents so that the parent can enjoy stories together when it's convenient. And obviously we know that is the best way to read with your child, so everyone please do that. But it's not always possible to do that. But we see a world where there's a choice. You can make a choice to have a better form of entertainment for your child, and it doesn't have to cost much. And that we see as being accessible to literally hundreds of millions of families across the world. So that's the vision in a kind of long-winded way.
I think it's all about revolutionizing publishing at the end of the day. Like, we are becoming more digital as a society, so why can't reading go that way too? And I think that's what we're trying to bridge there. And hopefully it will help with the literacy as well, because kids will want to read and find it exciting as well.
And I assume you guys are both still advocates of physical books as
Absolutely.
well,
we
right?
use them every day.
Yeah.
You know, that's it.
I love reading from a book. You know, I love the feel. It's not saying that we're slamming books or anything like that, or physical books. We have plenty. We have a library at home. It's just that we want it to be convenient for the family. We want it to be fun for the child, and hopefully something that they can enjoy together.
But it has to be that. Otherwise, we're not going to actually solve the problem. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And then reading is going to just disappear.
If you had to both distill down just one bit of advice to pass on to an early stage founder, what would that be?
Can we do one each? Should I do? I would say aim high and believe in yourself. You are only a few conversations away from someone that has the key to what you're looking for. If that's investment, if that's a relationship that you need, if it's a partnership. So yeah, that would be.
And Charlene, what was your one piece of advice?
I think you've got to remember that starting a business and being a founder, you're going to have ups and downs. And it's certainly something I've realised, that on a day-to-day basis, you can have good days, you can have bad days, you can have a mix. And I think it's that bouncing back and that resilience, and take a break as well, refresh yourself and come back into it with, a new head. You'll see things with a completely different eyes open and a new outlook on life. So definitely have resilience and realise that there's going to be a lot of hard times as well as good times.
If you were offered £5 million today, right now, for your business, would you sell it?
Absolutely not.
Oh, good. Do you know, we have had that conversation. Yeah. Sometimes when things are going tough, we're like, would we just sell out? But no, I don't think.
I think we maybe are in a slightly different position to most businesses. We hold this invisible trump card, right? This is our life. We love it. We could probably do this forever. Do we want to? Do we know whether that's going to happen or not? I don't know. Doesn't matter. But we love what we do. So that is the trump card that you hold against any conversation, investment conversation, pitch, VC, you name it. You can walk away and say, no, sorry. I think that's fine. I don't, we don't want to take the offer.
I think as well, we've got visions of where Sooper Books can go. And I think until we kind of get in that bracket, then maybe ask us the question again in a few years and a higher money.
Love it. And what is that ultimate vision then?
Well, this is the thing. I'm not sure how much we can say, but
I mean, we see Sooper Books as being a £1 billion kids entertainment brand. That's what we see. There's different ways and routes and things of getting there, and we don't know what exactly the path is going to look like to get there, but that is what we believe is possible.
And we have got things in play. It's just they're quite under wraps at the moment. But yeah.
So where can people find out a bit more about both of you personally and more about Sooper Books?
Well, go to sooperbooks.com, and that's SOOPER, so double O.
And guys, I know you had a question for our listeners. So what is that question?
Well, actually, we thought about this quite hard, didn't we? We were thinking, what's the best question? We thought we'd like to use this question almost for us to learn from as well. So we'd love to know if you're parents or if you've got children in your family, whether that be nieces, nephews, how long you spend currently at the moment reading, or that child reads. So it doesn't have to be with them, but how long does that child read at home?
And did you have some options for people to vote on there?
Yes, so we've got 4 options. So the first one is none. The second one is I don't know, under 20 minutes. And the last one is over 20 minutes.
Per day.
Per day.
Excellent. Charlene, Si, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time and all of your insights along the way.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
Ollie.
so much for having us.
I really hope that Sooper Books and everyone else working to maintain and improve literacy succeed in their mission. A world without reading sounds really bleak. I definitely think that reading is one of the most joyful and calming and actually important things that I do in my life. How about you? Are you a big reader?
I read 2 to 3 books a day, Becky.
2 to 3 books a day.
I'm cheating here. That's on my bedtime routine with the kids. So yeah, don't believe everything you hear. But yeah, no, I think reading's vitally important. Like obviously building that bond with your children's incredible, and watching them, get reading for themselves, like doing their phonetics and then actually spelling out the words and then stringing the words together. It happens very quickly. My son only started school in September, and he's already reading now, which is scary.
Amazing.
But yeah, no, I think reading is something that you need to make time for, regardless of what you're doing, whether you're working in a job or building a business. I think it's something that enables you to get away from a screen first and foremost. I think it enables you to do that. I think it just gives you that downtime to be able to refocus, and also learn. It doesn't really matter what you're reading, fiction, non-fiction. I think it all helps you connect the dots, is what I tend to find. But yeah, I always go away on holiday and like really get into reading. Like I need to come back and I need to make this a habit, and I haven't quite mastered that one yet.
Yeah, I got back into the habit earlier this year, and I have been reading a little bit most days. And the same thing, to some extent, it doesn't matter what it is. It's more about the process of reading, and I've been reading more fiction because for me that's an escape. That's easy. That's fun. I mean, I do read lots of non-fiction, I guess, anyway. In the context of work, we're probably reading a lot, just reports and that kind of thing. But yeah, definitely try to read more, because for me that's a nice peaceful place. A place that is not so peaceful for me, and I've spoken before about my autism diagnosis, and I'm certainly have always been quite introverted, is talking to people and forming relationships. And so it's often been something where I've been quite afraid, but something that Charlene and Simon were talking about, and we referred to this earlier as well, is like how important these relationships are. And this piece about you're only a few conversations away from what you need. I loved hearing that because it made it feel a lot less overwhelming to go out and have conversations and form relationships. And, like I said, for me, it's not the easiest of things. It can take a lot of energy away from me. It's not that it's a difficult thing necessarily, but it just takes so much energy. So when I kind of have that idea of, no, actually, you don't have to have a million conversations. You, as you were saying earlier, you're very connected to several people, and it's not going to actually take you long to get to that conversation that you need to have.
I like to think that I'm fairly well networked, but I actually most of the time don't enjoy networking per se. What I really struggle with is those initial really surface level conversations, the weather, the food, the drink. I need to go a bit deeper. I just struggle with those initial icebreaker bits of introductions. I've got better with it, obviously, over time, and it's something that you learn to do as a founder. But I want to have a sort of a more meaningful conversation. So I find if there's a really inspiring talk, or there's a presentation from someone, and you can actually get into the meat of the conversation without going down the whole surface level thing first, for me that works a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I need to do. And my way of doing that is to be the person doing the talk on stage, and then like people come to you. It's a lot easier. But I think that there's other things that we can learn as well from Simon and Charlene about kind of how you do this and how you can do it effectively. I think something that came across in everything that they were doing is this idea of kind of aiming high and having your North Star, but also getting clear what you want from people, and or even what it is that you're trying to say, what it is that you're trying to represent. I think that makes it easier. If you just go in very kind of wishy-washy and all over the place, then the conversations never get to that deeper point.
And I hate to see this. I think if people are being like quite scattergun in terms of their approach and not being specific, then what are they hoping to actually get from that conversation? Like they said with their investors, if they've got a specific problem, they will go to them and reach out and ask for help. But if they're not being targeted, if they're saying, oh, how do you overcome challenges, or being quite vague, then if you ask a crap question, you're going to get a crap answer, right? And also what you got to remember is that most people are very busy. Lots of people, sometimes in our human nature, we're quite self-absorbed. So sometimes we just don't have the bandwidth. Like if you get a question from somebody in your DMs on social and it's a bit vague and you don't know where to start with it, how do you process it? Like, how are you going to give a meaningful response if the actual approach wasn't very good in the first place? So it's a skill that you definitely need to refine.
I love that idea of it's how you frame your questions that's really important. And of course, something else I always like to talk about when we're talking about building relationships is listening as well. And so like take the onus off yourself, craft some really great questions and then listen to the answers. And everyone loves kind of being able to tell their story. So you're sort of giving them a platform to be able to tell their story. And in that, you're going to begin to build some of those relationships. Something else that gave me a lot of hope as well was this idea that if you don't know the right people now, doesn't mean that you won't in the future. And I guess we touched on this, and we've touched on it a lot, that if you're an entrepreneur that doesn't come from a kind of very well-connected business background, you haven't been to the right schools or the right universities, or then sometimes it can feel a little bit hopeless. You just feel like everybody else is operating in a world that you don't even have access to. But in fact, it always happens one person at a time. So you can go and have that conversation, and then that's going to open up to something else. And for me in my career, this has happened time and time and time again, where you kind of just have one starting point, and that has ultimately led to some incredible opportunities, incredible friendships, relationships. And so that's something I think to really hold in your mind as well, that idea of it doesn't, just because it's not here now, doesn't mean it's not something that you can achieve, these, your network or the relationships you want to build with people.
I think your starting point doesn't matter in that sense. Like, you've got to take responsibility for where you are and where you want to go. Like, people don't all have networks and money and this privileged start in life. Like, I was the first person in my family to go to university. Like, it doesn't matter. You can build up networks, but it does take time. You've got to be patient. You've got to approach it in the right way. You've got to add value. You've got to reciprocate. You've got to listen. All of these fundamental things that you've got to learn over time in order to build lasting and meaningful relationships. But I think you've just got to start. That's the key.
I always think it's important to make sure you build space. Again, coming from a point of view where I can become very drained by this kind of, by conversations or by that relationship building. Give it enough space. Like, give this the reverence, I guess, it deserves, and give yourself a break afterwards as well. If you know it's going to be something draining to you, then figure out how you can carve out time. So it might not be a break from work, but it might be like, okay, if you've got something really people heavy, perhaps the next day you're going to shut yourself away if possible and focus on things that you can do by yourself and allow yourself to kind of reset by doing that, which is really the other part of the advice that Simon and Charlene were giving, which is this kind of bouncing from highs to lows, or being resilient and figuring out what you need to do to build your resilience. So something like that is something that some people might need to do. You might need to build in, okay, I have to have a quieter day if I've had a very people-centric day, for example. And I think I just wanted to flag again, like, how important it is to recognize that highs and lows are inevitable. We talk about it all the time on this podcast, but I think it kind of needs to be said. We need to keep reminding people that There's going to be good times. There's going to be bad times. The highs are as inevitable as the lows. I'm going to put that out there. And if you think that, there's always going to be something bad that's going to happen, I think you need to, again, shift your mindset, which is something we were talking about last week, into this idea that the highs are going to be there too. So you kind of got to ride that wave.
You do, and you only learn by experience, ultimately, by sometimes pushing yourself too much, not understanding what your limitations are, making those mistakes, and then readjusting how you manage your diary and your activities, and whether you're working on admin strategy or managing a team, whatever it is, like working out what elements you can do and when, and what is going to enable you to work to the best of your ability.
And doing entrepreneurship, part of that is about doing what you love. And this is what Simon said about in terms of like, that's your trump card. So if you find yourself in the position where you're not doing what you love and you haven't got that to energize you, you kind of want to ask yourself why, if you're in an entrepreneurial position, because if you're not loving it, then it can be really tough.
Yeah, I think if you aren't feeling it, obviously something is out of kilter. You're not fully aligned. So there's only 4 basic things that you need to look for. So are you playing to your strengths? Are you being paid well for what you're doing? Does the world need this solution? Is it a big problem that you're solving? And you're doing ultimately what you love. And if you get that sweet spot in between all of those things, then you're definitely going to feel very driven. And that, like Simon says, it's going to be your trump card, and you're going to play that to your competitive advantage.
Yeah, and I know I can hear people out there going, but what if I love it, but nobody's paying for it? Like, that really comes back to the crux of business, right? Like, this is your job as a founder to figure out, is there a market for it? Does the world want to pay for it? If there's not, maybe there's another way in order to fulfill your passions and do the things that you love. And perhaps entrepreneurship isn't the vehicle, although I would probably argue that I think that if you are really entrepreneurial minded, you'll find a way to make this work.
You will. You'll find the right bit. Ultimately, you're just trying to find the right business model. There's no harm in building a customer base and a reputation on a free model, or doing that for low value, because ultimately, if you are providing value, then you're going to find the right model to monetize that and bring that to life.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening, who's feeling frustrated, you still got this. Keep going. And again, learning from Simon and Charlene, it might be time to pivot. It might be time to think about a new way of doing this. But if you love it, keep at it. So if you're interested in knowing more about Simon, Charlene and Sooper Books, make sure that you check out their links. And don't forget to head over to our socials to answer the question from Simon and Charlene. We want to know how much the children in your life are reading. So, talking about the socials, Ollie, what are people saying about the last episode from Kim and Clementine?
We had a great question from Kim Palmer, founder of Clementine. She wanted to know, do you make your decisions based on more of A, intuition, or B, data? The results are in, and they are very split between the two. 60% of you make your decisions based on intuition, and the remaining 40% went for making decisions based off cold hard data. Now, I really think it comes down to 2 things. Firstly, A, your personality type, but B, also how much data you actually record within the running of your own startup. So thanks for that great question, Kim, and we got some interesting results for you.
Ollie, can you tell us about our next guest?
I sure can. He's a larger-than-life kind of guy, an exited founder called Roy Samuel, who is really making waves in the startup ecosystem with his business Connected. As I say, really great guy. And also what I love about him is that he's really talking about his battle and struggle with ADHD and how he uses that as a superpower.
Excellent. Love to hear neurodivergence being used as a superpower. Thank you everyone for listening. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget, there's a big selection of previous episodes. Just search Founded and Grounded on your favorite podcast player.